everybody, it's me GZ. Welcome back again to the Saw trap ranking. Probably wondering why I'm doing this again. So, the very first time I did this tier list was like 2 months ago, about three, and I really am not happy with how that video turned out. I think some of my rankings were very wrong because I think maybe my preferences have changed, or it just didn't make sense on why I put the traps in the specific tier that I did. A lot of my ranking was also based on other people's rankings, so it wasn't really a ranking I put together myself, because I was mostly afraid of not being different about my rankings. But now I have the courage to say that some of these traps are terrible. Some of them I put in either C or A or B. Any of those ones really deserve to go in F tier. And some of the ones I put in F tier might as well go upper rank or something. So that's why we're here in this video, to redo the video that I feel like could have been better. A quick rundown of how this tier list is gonna go. We have S tier. S tier is reserved for the traps that I think are absolutely mind-blowing, that they are standalone traps, that they are absolutely brilliant. A tier is going to go to traps that I think are really good, that they are very solid traps, but they're not quite S rank tier. B will be for traps that are okay, they don't really have much story to them, but they're pretty cool nonetheless. C will go to traps that I feel like were good but could have used a bit more effort, and F will go into traps that I really don't like. Either they're unwinnable or they really don't make sense and just like my basic hatred for it. So that's how it's gonna go. Also, in the last video, I ranked the traps even while they were in the tier list. Like, let's say I have these two in C tier. I would say, oh, I like the bathroom trap a bit more than the razor wire, and that made the entire thing very... Where did that go? No, crap, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. That made the entire process really drawn out, made the video like 1 hour long. I think I spent most of the video probably not even talking about the trap, mostly just trying to figure out which one I liked more than the other inside the tier, which I'm not going to do this time. That was way too tedious and I'm not going to do it again. There will be a few more Saw videos coming out before I start uploading a lot of my original content, so yeah, but these tier list videos are very fun, that I will admit. Without further ado, let's get started. So coming in at Saw X, the very first movie of the franchise in 2004, we have the bathroom trap, and I'm gonna put it in A tier. Bathroom trap is a very solid trap. It's the one that's drawn out for the entire movie. It has a lot of story to it, which I really like, and I like how we keep coming back to it as like a throwback to the original movie. It's really nice to see. And we have Dr. Lawrence Gordon in the trap. Oh, that's another thing I didn't realize I did in the video. Half of the characters I couldn't even remember the names. So that's why I'm doing this again, because it really made me angry on how I couldn't remember some of the names of these characters when they were literally right there. Anyway, so we have Dr. Lawrence Gordon, and we have Adam Stride, I think his name is. Something like that. And these two are in a trap together. Dr. Lawrence Gordon is a doctor who behaves a lot like Dr. House, if you guys know who that is, where he's very rude to his patients, but he's a very good doctor. But he also, I think, has an affair with his wife, and he's a bit of a workaholic, so he doesn't make time for his family. Adam, on the other hand, I'm not sure what he does. I think he stalks people to like take photos. Something like that. I'll put the actual reason why he's in the trap on the screen now, but that's sort of what I remember. This one is actually really good. I like the whole escape room type of feel, and these two working together in some of the scenes was actually very nice to see. Adam's performance on pretending to die was absolutely hilarious. And the fact that John Kramer is in the bathroom with them the entire time is so cool to see. But I still think that the bathroom trap isn't quite S tier. It's more of an A tier for me. The razor wire, I'm going to put it at a B. The razor wire maze is a trap involving a victim who struggles with self-harming. And it's a very ugly reason for the victim to be in a trap, because self-harm is a very serious thing, and it's very unfair to put him in a trap where he's already self-harming, but now he really has to brutalize his entire body just to get out. Because this trap involves, like it says, a razor wire maze, where there's a bunch of razor wire everywhere. He has to try and crawl through it to get out. And he only has, I think, 2 minutes to get out of the trap before the door shuts forever, and then he ends up dying because he flung himself onto the razor wire and he bled out to death. And I think that was really sad, but also it's a very terrible reason why he was put in the trap. And John Kramer's ideology really doesn't show in his traps. In some of them, yeah, but in this one, no. This one was actually very awful. This one really doesn't show his true ideology. The same with flammable jelly, and I know I put flammable jelly in either C or B. It's going in F. I do not like the flammable jelly. The flammable jelly trap is absolutely terrible. The guy that was in the trap, he was like lying to skip out days of work, and that's really a really bad reason to put him in a trap. Come on, man. I think we all realize, if you guys are Saw fans, just how bad John's ideology is, that his ideology is kind of BS, and the way he applies it is also BS. So that's why I don't understand some of the victims in these traps. But this one, dumb. This one's really dumb. This guy's covered in flammable jelly, and he has a candle, and there's a bunch of glass on the floor, and there's a bunch of numbers on the walls. And he's been injected with a poison, so now he has to find a combination on the walls to try and open the safe to get the antidote for the poison. But this was really dumb, because I feel like this was John Kramer's very first unbeatable trap. Because there was like a bunch of numbers on that wall, and some could argue that some of the numbers are a bit bigger than the other, there's a different color, all of those things. But even if you put me in this trap, there's a bunch of numbers, I have to figure out through trial and error what the combination is. This is dumb. This trap is really dumb. But we do have the reverse bear trap, and that's going in S tier. Fun fact, I'm actually making my very own reverse bear trap prop. And I've been wanting to make it since 2020, but I didn't have enough cardboard boxes. Now I do, and I'm very excited to complete the process. By the time this video is being recorded, I've only done the mouth part, but if I make any progress, I will put it up on the screen on what it looks like now. And the reverse bear trap is a great trap. I see a lot of people not really liking this one, which is very strange to me, because it's literally the poster child of the entire series. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the entire series, of just Amanda freaking out trying to get it out, killing her cellmate to get the key, everything like that. And the sheer brutality of the trap, which is that your mouth will get split open if you don't get the key in time. I don't understand why people don't like it. I truly love this trap. This trap is so cool looking. It's so interesting. It's such an interesting mechanism too. Like having a trap that would split your mouth open. It reminds me of, I think it was something pear. It was one of those medieval torture devices that would like split your mouth open. That is what it reminds me of. That's what it reminds me of. Sorry. And I don't know, this trap is really good. I really, really like it. It's my favorite one in the entire Saw movie. Then we have the drill chair. Drill chair is going in C. It's more of a distraction than it is a trap. This guy in the trap is just there to distract Officer Singh and the other guy. I can't remember what his name is. But the guy ends up surviving anyway. So yeah. Shotgun Hallway, F tier. I freaking hate this one. This is not even a trap. That is Jigsaw's security system. This one, if you step on a tripwire, it'll trigger a shotgun and it will blow your head open. And this gets an innocent cop killed who's just trying to do his job. And I really felt bad for Officer Singh. And a lot of people really think that this is a Kevin McAllister type of trap. If you guys don't know who that is the kid from Home Alone who created a bunch of booby traps in his house. And I totally agree. This is definitely a Kevin McAllister type of trap. It's not even a trap, it's a security system. And it's still really dumb. Zepp's test, I'm gonna put at C. Last video, I didn't fully explain what Zepp's test was because I didn't understand it fully. What this test is about is that Zepp he's been injected with the poison, and he has to either kill Adam and Lawrence in the bathroom, or he has to kill Lawrence's daughter and wife in order to win his game. But I feel like Zepp was a bit dumb when it came to this trap. It's not like Jigsaw was actively searching for him or monitoring him. Zepp was actually allowed to just go to the hospital, phone the police to get Lawrence and Adam out, to save the daughter and the wife. He really didn't have to do all of this. Zepp also works for Dr. Gordon. I don't know what as, but you have to shoot your boss or you have to shoot his family. That's a very bad lose-lose situation. And this guy, injected with poison, Jigsaw is not going to find you. He's not going to know where you are. Go to the hospital, you can get treated, call the police, everything is fine. The entire movie doesn't happen. Or the entire 9 other films don't happen. Which, yeah. So, that's what I think of it. It's not too special, in my opinion. Alright, now we're moving on to Saw 2. Saw 2 is one of the best movies, in my opinion. I think Saw 2 is an incredible film. And we start off with an opening trap of being the death mask, and that goes in A. I quite like the death mask. It's like an Iron Maiden, but just for your head. I see this tier list calls it the death mask. I call it the Venus flytrap. A lot of people also call it the Venus flytrap because I feel like that's a cooler name. That is a cooler name. And I can't remember what this guy did. Sorry. I can't remember what he did, but he's put in this trap. He has the Iron Maiden on his head, and there's a key behind his eye. But in order to get out of the trap, he has to dig that key out of his eye and unlock the chain. I think this guy handled it a bit weirdly. He tried to really go behind his eye when he didn't need to. He was like cutting his eye and not the stitches. I think even the video game had this trap where the dude cut the stitches to get the key out. This guy didn't do that. He tried to cut out the eyeball. But I think your best bet was cutting out the stitches. So yeah, this guy died very stupidly. He could have really gotten out if he just thought a bit better. But I still think that this trap is really cool, and that's why I deserve to go in A. Electrified staircase, F. This is also Jigsaw's security system. I'm not even gonna go into the depths of what this trap is. It's basically this guy, one of the cops falls through the floorboards and gets his shin broken. The other cops get pushed into an electrified fence and get electrocuted to death. That's it. That's the entire security system. I don't like it. Nerve gas house. Love it. Love this one. This one's also like the overall trap of the movie. I think this might have been the very first group trap in the entire series. A lot of people say it's Saw 5 when I really think it's Saw 2. Because you have a bunch of ex-convicts in a room, and you have Eric Matthews' son. I can't remember his name, but he's there, and he's the most innocent one of the entire group. And you also have Amanda. If you guys don't know who Eric Matthews is, he's basically a detective that's a very He's a very corrupt detective. He plants evidence in convicts' crime scenes, and he gets them wrongfully arrested. Some of them have been arrested before, so he just decides to arrest them again, so he's not a very good cop. He mostly just wants to get a bunch of people that he thinks is doing horrible things in jail. Eric Matthews actually becomes a very prominent character in the next 2 films, but we'll get into that later. But the nerve gas house is the overall trap of the entire movie, and these convicts are breathing in a very deadly gas that will kill them, and there's a bunch of antidotes hidden around the house to help them get out and survive. Magnum Eye Hole, F tier. There's more F tier traps than I thought there would be. Magnum Eye Hole is basically this trap where this the guy Xavier reads out a letter saying that you shouldn't use a key to open the door. And this guy, I think his name is... What's his name? He had a very stupid name. I'm gonna call him Marlon. If I remember his name, it'll be up on the screen, but now I'm gonna call him Marlon. Marlon looks through the damn eye hole and turns the key. First of all, why would you look through the eye hole when you're turning the key? Not even normal people do that. First they look through the eye hole, then they open the door. They don't look through the eye hole and turn the key. What the hell, dude? And I think at the beginning of the movie, there was a girl that looked through the eye hole. I think she saw nothing. Why couldn't she just tell them that she saw nothing? Or she was looking into the barrel of a gun, something like that. But this guy died really stupidly. That's why I'm going to put it in F. The furnace, this one's scary because it's dead, it's burning alive, but really I think I'm going to put it at C. The guy, Abby, I think his name is, he crawls through a giant oven to get 2 antidotes. He didn't look around the entire oven the first time, which is his biggest downfall, because if he looked around the first time he went into the oven, he would have seen that there's a nozzle that can turn off the fire once it's started, and you're climbing into the oven. I'm pretty sure you should be looking around when you're climbing into an oven. So he gets the first antidote, but the next one actually shuts the door, turns on the fire, and I think in his tape it says only the devil can help you out, and that's referring to a little devil pointing to the valve to close the gas that ignites the fire. And this guy, he died really in a stupid way that could have been avoided. Needle pit, solid A. I love the needle pit. The needle pit is actually my favorite trap in the entirety of Saw 2. It's basically this trap that's meant for Xavier, who was a drug addict, but he ends up throwing Amanda instead into this pit of needles. And they're all used, they're all dirty, and it's so gross. I'm personally not a fan of needles. They don't scare me, but I don't like them. I know a lot of people do like needles. Some people are really squeamish. The people who are squeamish really, really like this trap. I do too, but not as much as the reverse bear trap, in my opinion. And I did tell the story of how this trap was made. They bought a bunch of needles, had to replace the tips with fake ones. Shawnee Smith was actually pregnant during this time, and Xavier threw her into the pit really harshly. She actually got stabbed by one of the needles, I believe, so they had to research all the needles again. But it was a really, really good trap. I really liked it. Razor box, I'm going to put it as C. This girl died really stupidly as well. She didn't bother playing the tape, which you're supposed to do to figure out a way to survive, and she puts her hands through this glass box that has a bunch of razors at the bottom that cuts her hands up to try and get an antidote. She puts both of them in there, which is her biggest fault, because how are you going to get out? She ends up dying from the blood loss, but I really think, even though she was delirious from the gas, I still feel like she had some common sense still left in her. So I don't know what happened. But yeah, this girl died really stupidly. That's why I'm going to put it at C. Alright, now we're moving on to Saw 3. Saw 3 is actually also a really good one. I like Saw 3 a lot. Classroom trap, C. I'm going to put it at C. It's a trap made by Amanda. So if you get a trap made by Amanda, you're not going to survive. Those ones are rigged. Absolutely rigged. So this guy Troy has been in prison in and out, and now he's in a classroom and he has a bunch of chains going through him. There's some on his shoulders, in his Achilles, in his hands, and there's one in his jaw. And it's going through his bottom jaw, and I don't think he would have survived if he actually found out a way to pull it out. But I also think he wouldn't survive because he would die from the blood loss. Because ripping out your jaw, there's arteries there's a lot of bleeding that can go on, so you'll just die. And this trap is also dumb, not because of the fact that it's rigged, but also he couldn't even escape. He was bolted in there. The door was sealed to like cut the door open with that wielding tool because it was wielded shut. How was he gonna get out? He was gonna die anyway. Whatever, man. This one's still dumb. Angel trap. Okay. I love Detective Carey. Detective Carey is one of my favorite characters. And I think I put the angel trap at a C last time, but I think I'm gonna put it at a B. The angel trap is actually a very beautiful trap in my opinion. It's rigged. Once again, she can't get out. And the whole trap by itself, the concept is very cool. I like it. I think it's supposed to be based off of the Vikings torture method of breaking open the rib cage to spread it out at the back to look like eagle wings. I think that's what it's supposed to be referencing, but instead it like pulls them out from the front. The scene itself is actually very beautiful, and I think that's why I'm gonna bump it up to a B this time. The trap was that she had these hooks in her chest, and there was a key in a vat of acid, and she had to get that key before it dissolved. Even when she got the key, the lock didn't open. And the way she just like grabs onto the chains and just accepts her fate is such a heart-wrenching but such a beautiful scene. And that's why I like it. Last time I rated it a C because it was unbeatable, but this time, even though it's unbeatable, it's a beautiful trap. Shotgun collar I'm putting at C. It's a dumb trap in my opinion. I don't even know how this one works properly. Alright guys, give me a second. I think there's food at my door. Alright guys, I'm back. The Mr. D guy gave us a car cover. My mom bought a car cover for the car so that it doesn't get wet when it's raining. Or when it's hailing, it doesn't get hurt, but whatever. Back to our tier list here. We were talking about the shotgun collar. The shotgun collar is dumb, in my opinion. It's a very weird trap. I don't know how it's linked. I don't know how it's linked to the perimeter that Dr. Lin is in, and I don't understand how it's also linked to John's heartbeat, so if he dies, so does she. And the biggest drawback is how it fires, in my opinion, because at some point the shotgun collar has to fire and it has to blow your head open. I don't understand how it fires, because even the little triggers like are really small. I don't think something like that can really detonate a bullet, but it's just a dumb trap. I really don't like it. Then we move on to Jeff's trial. I have to say Jeff is a freaking idiot character. I hate Jeff. I know he's a grieving father. I feel extremely bad for him, but he is terrible. All these people died because he is such an idiot. Anyway, so Jeff's trial involves him forgiving the people who were involved in the death of his son in a car accident. So the first one, we have the witness to the entire thing that refused to go to court to stand, and she's put into this giant freezer where the room is really, really cold. It's below freezing, and she's strung up naked. That's the one thing a lot of people don't like about this trap, is the nudity. I really think that if you put her in the trap with just her clothes, the clothes would like stick to her skin. And like if, let's say you put water on her first and she's soaking wet, and then you put her in the trap, those clothes would like freeze to her body. So if she survived, it would give more of an impact because she would have to try and take those clothes off, but it would stick to her skin. That would be a more horrifying concept instead of just putting her in there naked. So there's a bunch of hoses next to her that'll spew water at her. And if Jeff's not fast enough, she'll be covered in water, and the water will freeze on top of her, and she will suffocate to death. Jeff is really dumb because all he needs to do is just stick. He has to lose a piece of skin because the bars are so cold that it actually burns. He has to stick his hand through this barred cage to get a key. He loses a piece of cheek skin because of how cold the bars are. But he also could have just put his sweater next to those bars and just stuck his hand through without losing the skin, and he still would have gotten the key. In my opinion, I would have acted faster and just gotten the key immediately. This lady did not deserve to die. I know it was really terrible of her not to appear in court and plead her case on why the guy that killed Jeff's son deserves the jail time. But she didn't deserve this fate. If I was Jeff, I would still feel bad. I mean, I would still hate her for not appearing in court, but I wouldn't let her die. That's not what I would do. But it's going in C. I still think it's a very bad trap. It could have been done better. Also, the hoses that shoot water at her, I feel like the water would just freeze as soon as it comes out. I feel like there's like water dripping out of the hoses themselves. That would freeze and it would clog up the pipes. So I don't understand, man. This one didn't make sense to me. The pig vat I'm gonna put at B. It's a disgusting trap, but it's actually pretty cool. The judge that gave Jeff's son's killer a light sentence is strapped to the floor by his neck in a giant hole in the floor. And there's a bunch of rotten pig carcasses that are coming down from the ceiling and getting chucked into a grinder, and he will slowly drown in pig guts. And that's a very terrifying concept, a very disgusting way to go to, and the only way for Jeff to actually get him out is to burn his son's toys to get the key, which is actually very sad. I think that's a very mentally taxing thing to do to a grieving father, is burn his dead son's toys. That's like the one thing he has left of his son, and doing that is extremely cruel. John also lost a son, but I don't think he understands that everybody grieves differently. I feel like he thinks that he's grieving his son wrong the entire time. I don't think you're grieving Gideon the right way, John. You're putting people in death traps because of your son's death. I know Jeff is a really stupid character, but he really didn't deserve this trial. And the pig vat will go into a B because of the mentally taxing part of it and because of how disgusting it is. Like, it's such a unique concept to me. The rack, S tier. The rack is an amazing trap. Even though Saw 3 had some pretty weak traps, the rack was absolutely incredible. This trap is so brutal. What happens is Timothy Young, the killer of Jeff's son, is put in this device where it will slowly twist all 4 of his limbs, and it will eventually twist his head 360 degrees until he dies. And I think that is such a horrible way to die. That is so painful. You have to endure all 4 of your limbs getting twisted. Not even at the same time. One at a time, each of his limbs are getting twisted, and you have to live with that pain until you die. It's so gross, and I really truly think that this trap is the best one in the entire series. Yeah, you have the reverse bear trap, yeah, you have the death mask, all the iconic ones, but nothing can beat the rack in terms of brutality. This one is amazing. And Timothy Young, he was just a guy who made a mistake, and it actually killed somebody. He was drunk, and he ran over Jeff's son, and that ended up killing him, and he was absolutely devastated with what he did. And you always think that the killer is just some terrible guy who's done so many bad things, but when you go to this trap, it's just a regular guy put into a death trap that really didn't deserve it. Yeah, he killed somebody, but it was an accident. But yeah, rack S tier, love it. Amanda's test, I'm gonna put at C as well. All the tests I think are gonna go here, including Jeff's. Amanda's test is where she just has to choose between not killing Dr. Lin, and she ends up doing it anyway, so she fails. And Jeff's test is not to kill Jigsaw, because then he'll kill Jigsaw, but then he'll kill his wife, who is Lynn, which is one of the big twists in the movie, is that Dr. Lynn is actually Jeff's wife. So yeah, both of these two failed their tests. I feel like all three of these tests were failed by their victims. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Now we move on to Saw 4. Saw 4 I also think is one of the weakest ones, because you killed John, what are you gonna do now? But anyway, Mausoleum. I actually quite like the Mausoleum trap, so I'm gonna put it at A. A lot of people may disagree with me on this one, but I think the Mausoleum trap is a very, very unique one. There's this one guy on the other side of the room that has a key around his neck, but his eyes are so shut, and the other guy, who I believe is Art Blank, who is Jigsaw's lawyer, he has his mouth sewn shut, and he has a collar that is able to be opened with the key from the other guy. And if they are too slow, they will slowly be strangled to death because there's a chain pulling them towards the center that will slowly choke them. Now, I do feel like both of them could have survived if Art tried to calm the big guy down, the guy that couldn't see. I understand that that's very terrifying. Like, not being able to see, knowing that you're going to die is such a terrifying concept. But I feel like it could have been handled in a much better way. I still like it, though. Do I want to put it in A? Nah, I'll go in B. It's pretty solid. Scalping Seat goes in B as well. This involves a pimp. I forgot her name, but she owns a brothel and she grooms young girls into prostitution. I don't want to say it out loud because I might get demonetized. But this girl ends up grooming young girls into a very not really nice line of work. And it's very terrible of her. So this trap eats her hair, and it slowly starts to pull at her hair, which will then pull off her head skin, slowly scalping her. And the guy whose test this is actually a test for Officer Daniel Rigg. He is a cop that Jigsaw thinks gets involved in things that he doesn't need to, or does decisions that he doesn't need to do in a certain situation, so that's why he's going through these cycles of traps. But really, I think he's just trying to do his job. Rigg really wants to bring people to justice, so that's why he does the things that he does. Yeah, it can be a bit out of line sometimes, but he truly is a good cop. In this situation, he was a bit slow, which I really didn't like, because this lady was almost losing her scalp by the time he was able to get the combination, when really, I think he could have just cut her hair. There was like a broken piece of glass somewhere that he could have just cut her hair with, and then she would have survived. But then again, if she survived, her task was to kill him, so that he wouldn't arrest her for the things that she does. Still a solid trap. Bedroom, S tier. Love the bedroom trap. This trap might actually be my favorite one in the entire movie. And it's because the guy in this trap is an absolute dirtbag of a human. He is a predator, and he preyed on a lot of people that lived in his motel, or his hotel, I can't remember what he owned. But he was such a terrible person, and he was strapped to this bed, and he had 2 buttons, and he had to gouge out his eyes in order to survive, otherwise all 4 of his limbs would be ripped from his body. And I truly think it's a great trap. There's a lot of symbolism and poetic meaning behind it. It's really good. That's why I like it so much. Then we have the spike trap. Actually, I put the spike trap in F, I believe, but I think I'm going to put it at B this time. The spike trap is actually very cool. I think the scene itself is actually really fun. The spike trap involves this couple where the husband is abusing the wife, and there's these spikes that are going through her non-vital areas but through his vital areas, and vice versa. And in order for one of them to survive, they have to pull out the spikes that are going through them. I think this trap is also known as Cupid's arrow, which is a very cool name for a trap like this. And the lady ends up surviving because she's really sick of her husband's crap. And the way she goes, "Alright, let's go," before she starts pulling out the spikes is also a very powering moment, because she's finally taking action against what he's doing. And I'm happy that she survived. Explosive Puppet. Yeah, Explosive Puppet is also just a way to try and get rid of one of the cops, Lindsay Perez. And you get too close to Biddy, and his face explodes, and you get shrapnel in your face. That's it. The knife chair is actually for the guy that killed John Kramer's son. His name is Cecil, and he actually was a patient at John's wife's clinic, Jill Tuck. Jill Tuck owned a clinic that was for rehabilitation, and he was one of the patients. And he went in there one night to rob the place, but he ended up closing a door on her belly, which ended up causing a miscarriage, which was very sad. I felt really bad for the two for John and for Jill. But the knife chair was actually Jigsaw's very first trap, and it's actually a pretty solid trap, but I'm gonna put it at C. There's nothing too interesting about it. It's really nice to see what his first ever trap was until Jigsaw came and freaking ruined everything. The knife chair is actually a pretty cool concept. It did fall apart, so Cecil survived for a bit before he ended up attacking John, but John moved out of the way and fell into a bunch of razor wire and then died. So the knife chair didn't even kill him. The spine cutters, what was this trap, man? The spine cutters was actually attached to, I think, Art Blank, which was the same guy from the Mausoleum trap. And he was tasked with keeping an eye on Eric Matthews. I said we would come back to Eric Matthews. He actually survived Saw 2. He actually got locked in the bathroom in Saw 2, but he ended up surviving because he broke his foot to get out of the shackle. But Amanda ended up catching him, and I think Mark Hoffman attacked him and then put him in this trap, but then Hoffman got attacked and then got put into the same trap with Eric. And I'll get to that trap just in a bit because it's coming up. But the spine cutters was attached to Art, and the one thing Rig had to not do was open the door, and all three of these guys would have survived. But we never got to see this one in action, which I'm really sad about, because it would have severed his spinal cord, but we never got to see it in action. Now we come on to Eric Matthews' trap, which is the ice block trap. So Eric is tied to the ceiling with a shackle around his neck, and he is standing on a block of ice that is melting. And if he tries to kill himself by jumping off of the ice, the water will slowly rise up and electrocute Mark Hoffman, who's tied to this chair that has a bunch of live wire around it. And he tries to do it a bunch of times, but Mark ends up surviving because the water levels are too low to reach the live wire. And the way Eric Matthews is like pleading for his life, that he wants to not play anymore, that he just wants to die, is so sad. Seeing a character that was so confident in the first two movies now goes into this is actually very sad to see. And I don't think he even knows that his son is okay, that his son actually survived the nerve gas house. Oh, it's so sad to see. But the ice block trap is actually pretty cool because once Daniel Rigg opens the door, 2 ice blocks will come down and they smashed Eric's head. And I don't think that's how it would work, maybe. I thought it would just flatten his head to the point where it just looks like his head is a whoopee cushion, but it just explodes his head. But I'm gonna put it at A. I like it. I really do like it because it's such a psychologically taxing one too, because you're just on that suspense that Rigg is gonna open the door and then you're gonna die. That is like the worst way to really go out, just like waiting for your death. Now we move on to Saw 5. Saw 5 is also one of the weakest ones. Saw 5 is definitely not my favorite because it's really dumb. I don't like it whatsoever. It's actually one of my least favorite films. But we start off with a really cool trap being the pendulum, and that goes in A. So Mark Hoffman designed... Okay, a thing about Mark Hoffman, I don't like him. I don't like Mark Hoffman at all. He's a cool character, but I just don't like him. He didn't really deserve the spotlight that he really did, but I think the nice thing about him was that he's actually named after one of the producers that died after the filming of Saw 2, I believe. But he ended up being such a big character in the rest of the series because he just kind of just showed up. And I think in the second movie or third, I can't remember which one, he just showed up, and then all of a sudden he's such a prominent character throughout the series. But anyway, the pendulum trap involves Mark Hoffman tying this guy, I think his name is Seth Baxter, to this table where there's a pendulum that'll come down medieval style and cut his body in half, and it's because this guy killed his sister. Now, this one's cool because of the pendulum being a reference to Edgar Allan Poe. I love Edgar Allan Poe. His work is absolutely incredible. And I think it's just a solid trap. It's very scary, that I will admit. And I think it's done really well. It's also rigged. That's the one thing I don't like, but I like the rest of it. It kind of outweighs the fact that it's rigged. Water cube, C. I see a lot of people put water cube at F. It's mostly just a trap to try and kill Peter Strahm. Peter Strahm is a FBI agent that was introduced in the last movie that was trying to track down the new Jigsaw Apprentice, and the Jigsaw Apprentice happened to be Mark Hoffman. But this trap was meant to kill him, but he ended up surviving because he took a pen and he stabbed it through his throat to perform a tracheotomy so he could breathe. This trap was basically what it says. He would actually die by drowning because his head was in this giant cube that would slowly fill in water. The shotgun chair, F tier. It just serves a purpose to try and explain how Mark Hoffman became Jigsaw's apprentice, and there's nothing really to it, and the fact that the gun is not loaded is also a big takeaway from this trap. It's not even a trap in my opinion. And this is also the trap with the famous "killing is distasteful" line from John Kramer. But yeah. Alright, now we move on to the trial of these 5 different people. We have the necktie trap, which is the very first trap, and I'm going to put it at a B. It's actually pretty solid. The necktie trap, these 5 people are tied to a trap which will slowly pull them back into a guillotine if they don't get their key in time. But the way it works is that if one moves forward, the other ones will get pulled back. And one of the people ends up dying because of that specific reason. But the one thing is that the key that was in each of the boxes was actually able to unlock every single one of the shackles that were binding them to the guillotine. And the way the lady died was actually one of the worst looking deaths in the entire movie, in my opinion. It was so goofy looking, and there's a better decapitation scene coming up, which is why I don't like it. But it's okay. Sealing jars is F tier. This one, these guys were really dumb, because they keep saying survival of the fittest. When there's a bomb going off, they have to break the jars up the ceiling to get keys to open these chambers that will protect them from the bomb. Basically, more than one person can fit into these tunnels that can protect them from the bomb. I don't understand why one of them didn't just crawl into one of the open ones. This person that died in this trap died for a stupid reason. Electrified bathtub. This one, it was supposed to work as if all 5 of them survived. They would have to take a small shock to close a circuit to open the door to the next room. But there was only 3 of them remaining. One of the girls ended up killing the other one so that they can put her body in the bathtub and then open the circuit that way. And I'm going to put it at C. It's a bit better than the sealing jars, but not quite to be in any of the other tiers. Alright, 10 Pints of Sacrifice. Love this one. 10 Pints of Sacrifice is a great trap. It's not the best, but it's the greatest one in the entire movie, and I really do like it. The 10 Pints of Sacrifice involve the remaining 2 victims in the trap coming together to sacrifice 5 pints each of their blood to fill up a jar to get out. But the way it works is that all 5 of them, once again, were supposed to survive, so that they would take a non-lethal electrified shock, but they would also sacrifice only 2 pints of blood, which is not lethal. But now, these people have to sacrifice 5 pints each, which is a very lethal dose of blood. And I don't know if they end up surviving, I can't remember, but I don't really care to know. I still think that this trap is really good because of the emotional moment between the two in the trap. I think it's very sweet, and it's nice to see. Now we have the glass coffin. I'll put it at B. The glass coffin is between Peter Strahm and Mark Hoffman. Peter Strahm already figured out that Mark Hoffman is the Jigsaw killer, and he gets given a tape that tells him to go into the next room and climb into a coffin. But he fails to listen to the rest of the tape, and he actually locks Hoffman into the glass coffin instead of himself. But this was the worst move he could do, because the glass coffin was actually going to save him from the trap, and the trap was that the room would close slowly and it would crush him. It's like that whole walls closing in thing that you would see in like Star Wars, Half-Life, all of those things. But this movie does it the best. I think that this scene really pulls the entire movie together, but it's such a terrible trap. It's not as bad as the ones I put before it, but I still think it's not a very interesting trap. I see a lot of people really liking this one, and I can see why, but personally, it's okay. I think it deserves to go in a B tier, not an A or an S. Alright, now I'm moving on to Saw 6. Saw 6 is my favorite one, and I think I said that in the last video too. Saw 6 is my favorite Saw movie in the entire franchise. And we start off with the Pound of Flesh, which easily goes in S tier. The Pound of Flesh involves these two loan sharks who have more money than people can actually pay back. And the way this one works is actually a very Shakespearean way of designing a trap. They have to sacrifice a pound of their flesh, or the most flesh, in order to survive. Otherwise, these two screws on their head will drive into their heads and slowly pierce their brain, where they will die. And we have Eddie and Simone. Eddie is actually a bit of a bigger guy, so you would mostly bet your money on him winning because he starts cutting away at his belly fat. But Simone, on the other hand, is an absolute beast and cuts off her entire arm in order to survive. And she ends up surviving the end of the trap while Eddie ends up dying. And I really like Merchant of Venice. That's why I really like this trap too, because the symbolism behind the trap is also very powerful. Alright, then we start with William Easton's trial. If you guys don't know who that is, William Easton is the owner of a insurance company called Umbrella. Yeah, the company is called Umbrella. I wonder where they got that from. Probably from a very famous video game franchise. But yeah, he's the owner of Umbrella, and he made up this formula that involves only a select few people getting the amount of money they need to either save their lives with the surgery or just in general to get health insurance. And he ends up killing a lot of people because of this formula. It's a very real issue, I believe, that a lot of insurance companies do have a very picky set of rules that they have in order to give a select few people insurance that they need to have life-changing surgeries, or just in general. And it's actually based on a real issue in America, which is really interesting to me. But anyway, the start of his trial involves the oxygen crusher, which is where him and the janitor of his building are in this device that when they breathe, two big blocks will start to crush the midsection and cause them to die. Now, the other guy, the janitor, the very big crime that he committed to be in this trap was smoking. He smokes a lot, and we obviously know that he's going to die because a smoker's lungs is not as strong as a healthy person's lungs. And Hank, the janitor, ends up dying anyway. I think it's probably the weakest trap in the trial, so I'm going to put it at a C. It's a very cool name, it's a very cool concept, but I think it doesn't really match the intensity that the other ones do. Then we have the gallows. A lot of people don't like the gallows for some reason, and I don't understand why. The gallows, I ended up explaining a lot in the last video, but this one is basically William has his file clerk and his secretary on two platforms, and there's razor wire nooses around their necks. And he has to grab onto these two bars, and if he lets go of one of them, that person will die. And the secretary ends up having family and friends at home, while his file clerk is a guy with no family, no friends. He's completely alone. And he ends up dying because I think William kind of chooses him because there's no one that will miss him. So that's why I think he chose him instead of the old lady, when in reality he would have chosen the old lady to die if this wasn't a death trap situation because of his formula. But it takes a turn during this one, and I'm going to put it at A because it's actually a very emotional trap, which I like. The steam maze I'm going to put at B. It's a very interesting concept, and once again I see a lot of people not liking it. I don't understand why. Basically, William's lawyer has to climb through this maze where there's hot steam being blasted onto her, and she has this device around her waist that if the time runs out will pierce her brain. And the key to get out of the trap is actually in a stitch William has on his side. And she ends up taking a buzzsaw and starts swinging it at him to try and get the key out. And they start fighting, and then the timer runs out, the thing pierces her brain, and then she dies. And I still find it very funny how she just like rolls, and then she falls over the railing, hits her head on something else, and then immediately falls to the floor. That was funny. Shotgun carousel. You guys know it. You guys love it. It's going in an S tier. Love the shotgun carousel. It's my favorite trap in the entire franchise. And I think it's one of the traps that claimed the most lives in a singular trap. And it's such a powerful scene, seeing how William's workers are like fighting and verbally abusing each other to try and get William to save them instead of the other person. And I think that the people he ended up killing actually did deserve it, except for one person. The one person that I really think didn't deserve it as much as the other ones was the last guy. But whatever. This trap, love it. Love this trap to pieces. I can go on and on about it, but I don't have the time. Now we have Acid Room. Acid Room is William's final game, but it's actually not meant for him. It's actually meant for this mother and son in a cage that there's a big handle on the side of the wall that will release hydrofluoric acid into William, because there's a bunch of needles that will get stuck into his back and inject the hydrofluoric acid into him. I actually googled this. I also asked my dad. My dad he has a degree in chemistry, and I asked him and I asked Google if this can really kill you. Hydrofluoric acid is a very weak acid. It's not as strong as like hydrochloric acid or nitric acid or sulfuric acid. It's not one of the strongest ones, so I don't understand why this killed him immediately. It doesn't really dissolve much either, so I don't know why they put hydrofluoric acid. But anyway, one funny thing is that the son in the cage is actually the guy who played Roderick in the Diary of the Wimpy Kids movies, which is very funny to me. But anyway, Acid Room, I'm going to put it A. The way William dies is absolutely terrible, and the gore in that scene is so amazing, because you just see the needles go back, and then William's bottom half just falls to the floor because it's just been dissolved. It's just so good. The Reverse Bear Trap 2.0 is going in C. I really hate the look of this bear trap specifically. It looks really stupid. Like, it doesn't look like a bear trap like the original one does. And it's put on Mark Hoffman. He ends up surviving because he's actually smart. But, I don't like it. I didn't like it at all. Alright. Public Execution. The beginning of Saw 3D. I hate this trap. The public execution trap is dumb. I don't think any Saw trap should be on public display. That's an immediate giveaway of your location, or like what you do as a serial killer. And this trap is also very funny because it's between this girl and two guys who are in a love triangle. And the way this girl ends up cheering on whichever guy is winning is really funny too, because then they just get the hint that she's really in it to just be with them, not in a romantic way, but just for the fun of it. So they just end up killing her because they can. But I still think it's a really dumb trap. Saw 3D is also not one of the greatest traps. I mean, not one of the greatest movies. The traps are pretty solid. But, the movie itself I really don't like. It's one of my least favorites, but I still think it's better than Jigsaw and Spiral. The Pain Train also goes in F. This one involves Jill Tuck having a dream sequence where Hoffman kills her, and I think it was also for the nudity side, because when Jill gets cut in half, there's like, her boobs are showing, so it's a very uncomfortable thing to see. And it's a dream sequence, so it's not like she dies. And this trap is pretty much impossible, because it's just a way to make Hoffman kill Jill. So, there's nothing really to it. Horsepower, I'm putting at A. I love the horsepower trap. And the number one reason I like it is because Chester Bennington, the lead singer of the band Linkin Park, rest in peace, he was in this trap. And him and a bunch of other people involved in this trap were characters who were racists, they were Nazis, they were just terrible people. So Chester is glued to the seat of a car, and he has to rip out his back skin in order to reach a lever which will stop the car from moving, because when the car moves, it'll land on top of his girlfriend's head and crush it. This guy at the back has the same, like, Troy situation. Where is it? Yeah, Troy in the classroom trap, where there's a bunch of hooks in him, so when the car moves, it'll rip off his limbs and his jaw. And then there's a guy strapped to the front of the garage door, so he'll get rammed into. None of them survive, because Chester took a bit too long to try and get the lever. And I still think it's a really good one. It's also there to show off the 3D effect, but that's it. Lawnmower trap goes in F as well. There's a lot of traps that are going into F tier, I've noticed. But this one's dumb, mostly because of the fact that it doesn't make sense. There's this lady and this guy that are suspended from the ceiling, and there's a bunch of lawnmowers at the bottom. The lady survives by slapping him into the trap, and I don't know how she got down. We'll never know. Suspended cage. Alright, we'll put it at C. The suspended cage was meant to be beatable, because how are you supposed to do your trial? The trial involves Bobby Dagan, who lied about being a Jigsaw victim, and now he's gonna get what's coming to him. Silent Circle, S tier. I think I put the Silent Circle in A tier last time, but it's getting bumped up to S tier because I think it's the best trap in the movie. It's so uncomfortably cool. The Silent Circle involves his publicist being strapped by a straitjacket, and there's a hook, a fish hook with a key inside of it down her throat. And there's this device around her that has metal pipes that will dig into her neck if she is making a lot of noise, which is it's a very terrifying concept, because you have to scream in pain if this guy is going to get the hook out of your throat. Which she does. She does end up doing that. And she ends up dying because of it. And Bobby was... he says one of the funniest lines in the movie. Then we have the Impalement Wheel. The Impalement Wheel, I think... it's pretty okay. It's actually one of the scarier traps. Once again, there to show off the 3D effect of the movie. This girl is strapped to a board that will slowly push her towards three poles that will pierce both her eyes and her mouth. And the way to beat this trap is that Bobby has to hold up weights, but the weights will actually poke into his sides. And he has to do this until the time runs out so that it can save her, but he ends up not doing that, and she ends up dying. I think it's a very scary way to go. Just like seeing those pipes get closer and closer to your face is really scary to see. So I'm going to put it at B. I think it's a solid trap. Hangman's Noose is going in C. This one involves Bobby's friend. His eyes are covered, but he's also tied to a noose. And there's a bunch of floorboards that are broken. And the way Bobby handles this situation is really dumb. Like, this guy can't see, and he expects him to catch a key. What the hell, dude? personally, I would have told him to wait on the other side of the room and tried to make my way to him instead of him coming towards me. Wisdom teeth, C tier. Basically, Bobby has to pull out his teeth in order to get the code that is etched into his teeth to open the door to the next room, which ends up being the Braising Bull. The Braising Bull involves Bobby's wife, who I feel so incredibly bad for. If there's a person in the entire series that did not deserve to be in a trap, it would be Joyce. Joyce is such a supportive wife. She really believed that Bobby was going through a hard and taxing time of his life because of the fact that he was in a saw trap, but when she found out that he was lying, she was still so supportive of him. And she was such a blessing to this movie. And the way she died was so terrible. If Bobby failed his test, you have to take care of Bobby. You don't kill his wife. Freaking hell. So Bobby has to perform the trap that he made up, which was that he has to pierce his pectoral muscles to get the key to get out of the trap. But he ends up dying, and this lady gets fried and cooked alive in this Braising Bull. And that's why it's going in F tier. I feel extremely bad for this poor girl. I think it's a really terrible way for someone to die, and it's on somebody who really didn't deserve it. Sentry Gun is also going in C and F, and so is the cyanide box. These two were once again traps there to kill off the innocent cops just trying to do their jobs. So yeah, that's why it's going in F tier. And then the Reverse Bear Trap 3.0, which looks exactly like the Reverse Bear Trap in Saw 1, but it's used on John Kramer's wife, Jill Tuck. I still think that's a very terrible choice to give this trap to. Jill Tuck is a character I didn't really care about. I don't really like Jill at all. I think the entire fandom can agree that Jill is one of the characters that's really dumb. And I think her actor Betsy Russell is actually married to one of the producers of the movie, and that's probably the reason why she's such a big character. So yeah, but I'm gonna put it at C. It really doesn't deserve as much of hype as the original Reverse Bear Trap does, but you get to see it in action, and it's absolutely worth it. Love how the aftermath of this trap looks. Alright, now we move on to Jigsaw. Jigsaw is actually one of my least favorite movies, and it might be my least favorite it might be my least favorite movie. Because Jigsaw is absolutely terrible. I don't like the story, I don't like the traps, I don't like the characters. Jigsaw is just basically a very comedy-esque movie compared to the rest of the series. It has Marvel humor, like, oh, he's standing right behind me. Oh, that's not creepy at all. That type of humor. And it really takes away the fact that this movie is supposed to be about people getting put in traps that would kill them. The comedy side of this movie really makes it seem like a comedy movie instead of a Saw movie. I wouldn't be surprised if the secondary genre for this movie is actually horror. It's actually humor or comedy. And I used to say that Spiral is my least favorite Saw movie, but I really think these days it's actually Jigsaw, because Jigsaw is really bad. Anyway, but I really like this trap, the Bucket Room, and I'm going to put it at A. The Bucket Room is actually a trap that is a ripoff of the very first trap for the group in Saw 5. But I think I like this concept a bit better than the neckties. Basically, these guys have buckets on their heads, and they're slowly getting pulled into blades, and the one thing they need to do is sacrifice blood. And you can just make a tiny cut on your finger, but these guys end up sacrificing more blood than they need to, which is dumb on their part. But I still think it's a cool trap, and the antagonist of the movie, Logan Nelson, is freaking asleep the entire time. He didn't even wake up until he was face to face with the saw blades. But he ends up surviving because Jigsaw is actually behind the room, watching them. I don't, whatever. But this movie also messed up the timeline for Saw, which I really hated. And it introduced Logan Nelson, who was actually the very first apprentice. It wasn't Amanda, it wasn't Lawrence, and it wasn't Mark first. It was Logan, but he was a very dumb apprentice in my opinion. The chain hangers I'm putting in C. This one, these guys are gonna get strangled to death unless one of the girls in the trap who's been injected with the poison confesses which one of the syringes needs to be put into her, because they actually have a bunch of codes on them, and I think one of the codes was like 315, and it references the amount of money she stole from this lady that she actually accidentally killed because she took her inhaler. So that's all she needed to do, was just say which one was the right one. But they all get impatient, they're about to die, so the guy ends up injecting all 3 needles into her, and she ends up dying. But at least the rest of them survive. Alright, the leg wires and the grain silo, which are 2 traps that are basically linked together, are going in C. But it really doesn't make sense how these things are linked together, because let's say these 2 are trapped in the grain silo, and there's no one in the leg wires. These guys basically have no way of getting out. And the same with the leg wires. If there's no one in the grain silo and the guy already cuts off his leg, these guys are dead anyway. And I don't know what made Jigsaw so sure that the guy was gonna get stuck in the leg wires immediately, because it was addressed to him in the tape that the leg wires was meant to be his trap. The grain silo is actually a very scary trap by itself, because grain silos are terrifying already, because there's like cases of people drowning in the grain because it's so dense you actually fall down. It's like quicksand basically. Grain silos are scary enough, but now you have like sharp objects falling from the ceiling that will just stab you. But it's dumb. I don't like how these 2 are interlinked, but whatever. The cycle trap is also going in C. This one's also really dumb. Apparently this was Jigsaw's very first trap, not the knife chair. But it's a really dumb trap. The guy who is being lowered into the trap is going to get turned into little sushi rolls unless he can pull a lever to stop the trap. One of the ladies ends up being very smart and jams a metal pipe into the wheel of the motor of the motorcycle. And for a short bit, the guy can actually have the chance to pull the thing to make the cycle trap stop completely, but he's really dumb and doesn't do it, so he ends up dying. The characters in this movie specifically are also really dumb. The shotgun keys is actually a symbolic one, but it's still supposed to go in C for me. Basically, Jigsaw says to the 2 last surviving victims, the guy who lost his leg in the leg wires and the other lady, he says that their key to their freedom is actually in the shotgun. And the lady thinks that you should fire the shotgun, but it ends up firing backwards and explodes her head. But the guy that remains realizes that the bullet actually had the key, and now the key is ruined because of the blast, and now he's going to be stuck there forever. And the laser collars also goes in C. The laser collars is dumb. It involves Logan Nelson and somebody else, and they just have to confess what they did wrong and they won't die. But even though the other guy confesses what he did, he still ends up dying. And it's also like a very sci-fi looking trap. It's a bunch of lasers that'll just cut his face up. I don't think that'll work in real life, but whatever. Alright, my voice is getting really tired, but we gotta push through. Alright, last 2 traps, the last bit of traps before the next movie. Now we have Spiral. Spiral is actually not really a trap, not really a movie that is linked to the original storyline of Saw. It's more like an alternate universe to Saw, where there's a different killer, there's different people, all of those things. It actually stars Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, which is funny. But anyway, the first trap is the subway train. I love the subway trap. It's a very cool one, where it's this dirty cop that is suspended from the ceiling, where his tongue is in between these two clamps that will rip his tongue away. And his 2 options is to rip his tongue away and get out safely, or get hit by the train. He ends up ripping his tongue out at the last minute, and the train hits him anyway. He was so close to winning too, but I still think it's a really cool one. The same with the finger trap, I'm going to put at A as well. It's basically based off of a Chinese finger trap where this guy has a bunch of nets attached to his fingers, and he has to bite down on his tongue to slowly rip away his fingers so that he can survive. Otherwise, the bathtub that he's sitting in will fill with water, and there's 2 live wires attached to his hips, and it will electrocute him. But I don't understand why he can't just stand up. There's literally nothing stopping him from standing up and just getting out of the bathtub, or just standing up to the point where the water won't reach your hips. I don't understand. This one was actually a very easy one to beat. This one I'm putting in C, because it's actually the very first unwinnable trap of the movie. It's the wax trap. This one involves this girl who has a plastic bag over her face, and there's a tap filled with hot wax that will come down and suffocate her with the wax, and also burn her face off. And the way for her to survive is for her to sever her spinal cord. That's dumb. I have to be paralyzed in order to win this trap? How am I supposed to get out? And the wax comes out immediately, so there's like no way for me to really make a decision. I don't know. This one's dumb. The glass grinder I'm also going to put at C. It's an interesting concept, a very cool one at that, but I think it's executed a bit poorly. Because there was a way for Chris Rock's character to really save the guy who was in this trap by just removing all the bottles from the conveyor belt that was going to go into the grinder and just like not flay this guy alive. I don't think this trap would kill you, but it will definitely cause you pain, but it's still not a great trap. Marcus Banks test. It's going in F. This one is actually, I think, probably the worst trap in the entire series. This one involves Samuel L. Jackson being suspended from the ceiling in this like marionette looking thing, like this marionette looking setup, and he has his blood slowly drained from him. And Chris Rock's character is given 2 options. Number 1, to shoot the Jigsaw killer in this timeline and actually save his father and get the dude arrested, or to save his father but let the other guy, the Jigsaw killer, get away. But either way, the Jigsaw killer ends up surviving, and Marcus Banks dies because, like, the marionette part ends up lifting his hand to make it look like he's holding a gun. So the FBI agents or the SWAT team that comes in thinks he's hostile and just starts shooting at him. I don't know. This one's dumb. I really don't like it. Now we move on to Saw X. Saw X is the very last movie so far in the series, and it has some of the most interesting and pretty cool traps in the entire series. And I think it's also one of the best movies. I think it's really good. Now we have the eye vacuum. The eye vacuum is also a dream sequence. It's not actually a trap that happened. And it involves this guy who was stealing from patients in a hospital that was put into this trap where his eyeballs are attached to these vacuums. And the one thing he has to do is break his fingers in order to get out of the trap, but he ends up being a bit of a wuss and not breaking all 5 of them at the same time, and both his eyes get vacuumed out of their sockets. I don't think it would kill you, but whatever. I'm going to put it at A. I think it's a really cool trap, and the cover art for the movie itself with this trap is really cool, because the pipes just go intersecting each other, and it just makes the X for Saw X, and it's really cool. The pipe bomb trap I'm going to put at C. There's nothing too special about it. I think it's a trap based off of the games, if I'm not mistaken. This movie also is one of the ones that deal with a real life issue like Saw 6. Saw X is actually going to deal with medical tourism and the scams that come with medical tourism. Because in the movie, spoiler alert for the movie, Saw X opens up with John trying to get treatment for his cancer, and he ends up finding the villain of this movie, and the villain of the movie is actually in Mexico, and she offers that if he pays a lot of money, he will actually get a life-changing surgery that will cure him from his cancer. But that doesn't end up happening because they pretend to do a surgery on him, and they just run away with his money. So he's not actually cured, so he decides to continue his life as a killer. And the pipe bomb A pipe bomb trap was meant for the Uber driver that took him to the place that the surgery in quotations was supposed to take place. He ends up surviving, which good for him. He was actually a beast. Love this guy. And he ends up telling Jigsaw what happened, what these people are doing, what's going on, what their big plan is, so John can plan accordingly. Alright, very first trap victim besides this guy and the other guy. In the trial, it's actually for the people that wronged John, and we have Valentina. Valentina is actually a very cool character. I like her. She played the nurse in the fake surgery, and she actually works in a club as a sex worker. And she was actually about to get sexually assaulted before John kidnapped her. So she kind of got out of a situation, but got put in another situation. This is getting an A tier. I love this one. The wire trap is such a gruesome one. The wire trap is so cool. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it at S. I really like the wire saw trap. So basically what she has to do is she has to cut off her own leg with a geely saw, which is a saw made specifically for cutting bone. So she has to cut it, and then she has to stick this thing into her bone to draw out bone marrow, and she has to sacrifice enough bone marrow in order to fill up the beaker underneath, so that she can actually turn off the trap, otherwise she'll get decapitated. This is the trap that I said had a better decapitation scene compared to the necktie trap, because it was done really well. And the actress for Valentina was absolutely amazing. I think she did a great job as the trap victim. Like, she was really good, and I salute her. She was amazing. Then we have the brain surgery trap, which is my personal favorite from Saw X. It's the one that really made me squeamish, because it involves the guy who played, I think, the anesthesiologist in the fake surgery. He's actually a veterinary assistant, or he's a janitor at a veterinary clinic. And he gets captured, and now he has to perform his own brain surgery, where he has to cut open his skull and take out a piece of gray matter from his brain. But, like, what if he just took out the brain matter and just went completely brain dead? That's what I don't understand what happened. Where did he know where to pick out his brain? That didn't make sense, but it was still such a cool and intense trap. It was actually the one where I had to physically look away because of how brutal it was. Yeah, the wire saw trap was one I also had to look away, but this one was like way more intense than this one. For me, at least. A lot of people will disagree that this one was more intense than that one. But he ends up losing his game because the brain matter doesn't dissolve in time in the enzymes, so he can get the key. So there's these two like waffle ovens that just heat up and just close onto his face and burn his face. And the mask that actually has the waffle ovens inside looks like the Aztec god Tlaloc, I think the name is, because John ends up seeing that statue in the city of Mexico, and I think it's really cool. And I really, really like Aztec and Egyptian and Chinese, every like mythology there is. I'm absolutely a huge fan of mythology and old religions, all those things. Radiation trap, this one was like the dumbest trap in the movie, and I'm gonna put it at C. This one was really stupid. So this girl, her name is Gabriella. I felt incredibly bad for Gabriella. She was the housekeeper to the house that John was staying at. She didn't even have a part in the surgery. And she was actually a she wasn't a drug dealer, she was a drug addict. The same as Amanda. And Amanda actually had a bit of an attachment to her, so when she died, she felt incredible rage. I'll get into how she died in a minute. She didn't die from the trap. The trap was basically this giant radiation machine. She was suspended from the ceiling by her hand, but she was also tied to the floor by her leg. And Cecilia, the villain of the movie, tells her to break her leg first, which is probably the thing you shouldn't do. I think you should break your hand first to get out of the trap, so that you can, like, avoid the radiation machine at all times. But the radiation machine is on high radiation, so it ends up cooking her skin, and it looks really painful. She ends up dying because Cecilia steps on her neck, even though she survived. And I think that's a very sad thing, because I was really rooting for Gabriella to live. The bloodboarding trap is actually a very intense one. I'm going to put it at B. Cecilia is such a bad person because she ends up putting an innocent little boy on the other side of this trap with John. So what happens is they're on this big seesaw, and there's blood coming from this big jug in the top of the trap, that it will slowly leak blood onto the... Well, not slowly, it immediately just gushes blood onto their faces. And it's like bloodboards them or waterboards them. And they have to pull the lever next to them in order to like switch sides of the trap. But both of them end up surviving, which is nice. I still think putting a child in the trap was absolutely terrible, though. The gas chamber, also one of the weaker traps in the movie, but not as weak as this one. The gas chamber, it's basically between the villain and her boyfriend. Parker Sears, I think his name is. And what they have to do is the entire room will fill with poisonous gas, and there's a one compartment that they can stick their heads out to get fresh air. They end up fighting for the spot, and Cecilia ends up killing her boyfriend in order to survive. And then we have the final trap of the entire series so far, the disembowelment trap. Last time I didn't understand what this trap was, and I rewatched the trap scene for this. So basically the guy that told John that it was a good idea to go to Mexico to get this experimental surgery ends up getting put in this trap in the same bathroom we see in Saw 1. And we have Mark Hoffman returning, but I don't care. I don't care about Mark. And the disembowelment trap involves this guy being suspended from the ceiling, and there's this device that's being hooked around his waist, and there's a bunch of knives at the end of it that is slowly digging into his stomach. I didn't understand what the trap was until I rewatched it, and it looks painful, but I still don't think it's a good trap, so I'm going to put it at C. It was more or less there for John and Mark to watch him die, so it wasn't really a trap. Alright, here we are. This is the final ranking of the video. And boy, is my throat sore. I am extremely out of breath because I think I have a problem of either talking too fast or I say too much. But this is my final ranking for the movies, for the Saw movies and their traps. I think I'm actually quite happy with this list. I think that this is exactly what I wanted to see in my original ranking that I ended up not doing. And this trap this tier list I'm actually way more happy with than the tier list from the other video. I also like that I didn't do the whole thing where I ranked the traps even while they were still in the tier. That was very tedious. I'm so glad I didn't do it this time. But yeah, this is the final tier list. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with how this video is going to turn out now. And especially when eventually when Saw 11 comes out, I will do another ranking. Maybe my rankings will change, but I will be including the Saw 11 traps once they come out. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you are a Saw fan, please let me know what your favorite movie is and what your favorite trap is, and if you're feeling frisky, who's your favorite character? I'm really happy with how this video turned out, and I hope all of you guys are happy with it too. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!